Great. Welcome. My name is Bev Uhlenhake, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Maine Democratic Party. I think it's important in today's context of today's conversation, I also introduce myself as former City Councilor in Brewer and former Mayor. I served during the LePage administration. So in less than 3 weeks, Mainers will go to the polls and elect our next governor. And we here at the Maine Democratic Party have obviously been sounding the alarm about the threats that are posed to the state of Maine by a return of Paul LePage. He's a threat to our environment, to our economy and small businesses, to our abortion rights and other freedoms. Today, I'm proud to join this group of former and current Maine mayors to talk about another threat that Paul LePage poses, and that's a threat to our cities and towns and to our property taxpayers. So here in the state of Maine, we have this wonderful program called municipal revenue sharing. Essentially, the state of Maine is required to return 5% of its revenues back to municipalities, and then this share is then used to fund our essential services like police, fire, first responders, our schools, and so much more. And because those services, if not funded by municipal revenue sharing, would be funded by property taxes, the revenue sharing also provides property tax relief across the state of Maine. So when LePage was governor, he went to war on revenue sharing. While the state was already not meeting its full 5% requirement to our cities and towns when he took office, he actually reduced it all the way down to 2%. And he did this so that he could then reduce and pay for an income tax cut that helped mostly his wealthy friends and his donors. Of course, he wasn't satisfied with just reducing revenue sharing. He actually wanted to eliminate it altogether. Thankfully, he was blocked from doing that by our state legislature. When I was mayor of the city of Brewer during the LePage administration, I saw the toll that this took on our city and on other municipalities across the state. The cuts caused budget shortfalls that forced us to choose. We could either cut our essential services, cut things like police, fire, first responders, schools, all those things that our taxpayers, our residents rely on us for, or we could hike the property taxes. It really wasn't a choice at all. It's no surprise that under LePage's watch, property taxes increased in the city of Brewer as they did throughout most of the state of Maine. Let's be clear, LePage's tax cut was just a shell game. He cut the income taxes for the wealthy, and he paid for it on the backs of our homeowners, increasing the property taxes. The story's been much different under Governor Mills. Earlier this year, she worked with the legislature to fully restore revenue sharing to the full 5% threshold. That's been a godsend to our towns and municipalities. She also expanded homestead exemption, which LePage proposed cutting. There are other stories about homestead exemption we've already talked about. She also fully funded the state's share to school funding for the first time in our state's history. Those three things, restoring revenue sharing, increasing the homestead exemption, fully funding the school funding, with those three things, she provided an unprecedented property tax relief for Maine people. Now we have Paul LePage back on the ballot again. And that property tax relief and the funding for all of those essential services from our cities and towns is all at risk. During this campaign, LePage is already pushing for income tax cuts. He's hinted that revenue sharing would once again be on the chopping block. As I noted before, it's a shell game. His tax cuts are really a tax shift. It's not really a reduction at all. So today I'm joined by a current mayor and a former mayor who can tell you exactly what this would all mean for their cities. First, I'm going to invite up Thom Harnett, who can tell about his experience serving as a good mayor of Gardiner during the LePage era. Thank you, Thom.
Good morning. Thank you, Bev. My name is Thom Harnett, and I currently represent House District 83, which includes the town of Farmingdale and the city of Gardiner, where I reside. I served as the mayor of Gardiner for 6 years, and I served as a city councilor before that. And my time as mayor overlapped with Paul LePage's time as governor. And during that time, Governor LePage reduced revenue sharing by 60%. As Bev explained, he reduced it from the statutorily required 5% to 2% and also proposed eliminating it. So what did that mean for Gardiner, a small city of about 5,900 people? In the 6 years that I was mayor, Paul LePage took away $3.2 million in revenue sharing, $3.2 million over a 6-year period. And as mayor, working with my city council, we had 3 choices. We could cut essential services, we could dip in to our reserve funds, which is always precarious to do, or we could raise the mill rate and increase property taxes. And Gardiner, like so many other municipalities, we had to do all 3. But the hardest for me was raising the mill rate and increasing property taxes. Now, I can talk about $3.2 million. I can talk about the reduction from 5 to 2%. But what I remember most are the families that came before this city council asking for property tax abatements because they could not afford to pay their property taxes. These were members of the middle class, persons on fixed income, and senior citizens. And there is nothing worse than having to come in front of your friends and neighbors and ask for your property taxes to be abated. I saw too many people come before us shaking, scared that they were going to lose their family home, a family home that had been in their family for generations. They told us stories of every day having to make a decision. Do I fill the grocery cart? Do I fill the oil tank? Do I fill a prescription? Or do I pay my property taxes? It was so bad that I, along with other mayors, contacted then Governor LePage. And I wrote him a letter begging him to reconsider the cuts to revenue sharing because of the devastating impact it was having on the members of the community that I worked for. And what I received was an unbelievably curt and dismissive response from the governor, who basically said, stop your frivolous spending. That's what municipal government does. And as devastating as that was to receive, it also made me chuckle, because I didn't know that paving roads, fixing potholes, funding education, fighting fires, providing ambulance services, and defending public safety were frivolous. Instead, as Bev pointed out, Governor LePage put a $3.2 million tax burden on the back of the property taxpayers in Gardiner, Maine, so he could fund tax cuts for the wealthy. Now, Governor LePage had been a mayor. He was the mayor of Waterville, and when he was the mayor, he defended revenue sharing and said it was the most important thing for municipalities. But when he had the opportunity to provide tax cuts to his wealthy friends, all of a sudden, revenue sharing was not that important. At first, I thought he didn't get it, but he got it. He just didn't care. He didn't care about the seniors. He didn't care about the people on fixed incomes, and he didn't care about the middle class. Fortunately for us, Governor Mills gets it. The first bill that I put in when I was elected in 2018 was to restore municipal revenue sharing to its 5%. And we're there. We got there incrementally, but we are there now because we worked with Governor Mills to comply with the statute and get revenue sharing funded at 5%. As a result, there's more money coming into our communities, more money going to our schools to help educate our children, and more money to provide essential services to the people that we work for. And most importantly, more seniors being able to stay in their homes. Communities cannot go back to a time where then Governor LePage could repeat his behavior and take away those sources of revenue. Governor Mills understands how revenue sharing works. She understands why it's important. And I thank her for that and know that she will defend it when she's reelected to her second term. Thank you very much. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Thom. I'd now like to bring forward Mayor Carl Sheline of the great city of Lewiston, where we stand today.
Thank you, Bev. My name is Carl Sheline, and I'd like to welcome you all to Lewiston. As Bev and Thom mentioned, revenue sharing is critical to all of our cities and towns. As Mayor of Lewiston, I'm grateful to Governor Mills and the legislature for restoring the state's full obligation, both for essential services it's provided and the money it saved our residents on their property tax bills. However, just like how Paul LePage pulled the rug out from under Bev and Thom when they were in office, I am now worried that Paul LePage might do the same to residents here in Lewiston. As he goes around the state threatening to cut the revenue sharing program, I'd like to talk just briefly about what that would mean for Lewiston. Lewiston is Maine's second largest city and is a service center where many people from surrounding towns benefit from our services. We rely on revenue sharing from the state to fund a lot of our essential services and infrastructure. If the state were to cut that funding, even by 1%, we would face a budget shortfall and be forced to make even more tough choices than we already do. Most of the services that people rely on every day are funded through municipal government. Lewiston people tell me every day that they're concerned about crime in our city and our children's education. We can't and won't face the possibility of having to further cut budgets for critical services that our residents rely on. We don't have enough city employees, and we need them all. Any cuts to those services would immediately have a negative impact on the people of this city. The alternative, of course, is to raise property taxes. As Bev and Thom pointed out, property taxes were forced up during LePage's time in office because he gutted revenue sharing and underfunded our schools. As a result, most towns decided they cannot go without the services they would have had to have cut. LePage's tax cuts merely shifted the tax burden away from income and onto property taxes of the middle-class families. Families across Lewiston are already making tough calls when it comes to their own budgets. They shouldn't have to face higher property taxes because of a bait and switch like this. We get to decide whether our towns and cities will once again be forced into budget shortfalls and tough choices about whether to hike property taxes. I know what side I'm on. For the sake of not just Lewiston people, but people across this entire state who rely on local services and want to keep their property taxes low, please vote to re-elect Governor Janet Mills.
Thank you, Carl.